So yeah, grab them from a similar project or similar page. I grabbed them from UI elements because all these links are going to be the same. We still weren't getting the icons to work yesterday or Monday, and I never really looked at that again. So I'll have to do that at some point. This is pretty much all we need right now. I'm going to link to this CSS page. I'm kind of still keeping everything in the same CSS page. You know, I think it's useful. We could start a new CSS for this, actually. That might be a little better now that I'm thinking about it. I'm going to go ahead and start a new CSS because I don't think animations CSS. Actually, it's a little long, so I'm going to rename that anims. Okay, so I'm going to change this. I'm not going to link to master. I'm just going to link to a specific CSS page for animations. Body, I know I'm going to want to take off the padding. This is all reset stuff that we would usually do anyway. Margin padding 0. We could set a font family. What do we have? Open sans, sans serif, sans serif. On Roboto slab. I'm just going to set font family as open sans, and then if I want to change it to Roboto slab at some point, I'll do that. Okay, so let's think about what we want to do. I might go off of how these look here, just to have something to go off of. I find it helpful to do that at times, to have something already drawn out that you don't have to think about it as you're coding it. You can just look at it and be like, oh, I see the relationships, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't want to take the extra moment to draw something out and design it, that's totally fine. If you want to just wing it as you're coding, that's cool too. Like it's however you want to do it at this point. You could just get a little piece of paper and thumbnail sketch something, right? That also helps, just to help you visualize it so that you're not trying to visualize at the same time that you're trying to code. Visualizing and coding are two different parts of your brain, okay? And that's why it can be difficult sometimes. That's why I add this extra step of drawing before we code. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. If that doesn't bother you, go for it. You'll get to a point eventually where it's not going to be an issue. You'll get fluid enough with coding that you can think about the design as you're coding too, probably. But it's not a big deal to sit down and just draw something out. All right, so generally with navs, I like my navs to go all the way across the bar, at least the background color, but I like everything to stay within that same content margin that we usually have. Okay, so if we think about that structure, that's going to be an overall group that will be 100%, and then there'll be children elements or child elements, like one child group that has that margin, content margin stuff applied to it, right? A width and then margin 0. So I'm going to do, we'll call it nav. We'll just use our nav tag. Oops. I'll give it ID 1. 1. There we go. And then inside this one, I'm going to make a div. We'll call this menu stuff. And then inside here, if I'm going off of how this looks, I know I have a logo over here and then an actual collection of links. So I'm going to have two elements inside of this group here. We're going to have div logo, which will be like probably an image. This could be a div that has a background image put on it, however you want to do it. It could just be an icon. You know, if you wanted to use an icon, that's also fine. We'll figure that out. I might actually end up using an icon just to make sure the icon's working again. And then I need another div that is menu items. And in here, you can organize this in a couple different ways. You can use a series of list elements, or list items, sorry, and you could put them inside of an unordered list. Now that is a UL. Okay. If you do a UL, automatically it's going to come up with these different list elements, and you can add however many you want to. Should I turn off the other lights? Will you guys stay awake if I turn all the lights off? Is that easier to see? I might fall asleep. So this is kind of the old way of doing it. Unordered lists and list elements come with their own styling in the browser. This is a completely acceptable way to do it. Anymore, it is also acceptable to just use a div that has divs inside of it. That's not a problem either. Right? Either way is fine. Unordered lists are just containers. They're containers just like divs. They just have default styling the browser will apply to them that we usually strip in the CSS anyway. Okay. I don't care how you do it. I'm a little old school sometimes, so I'm going to use an unordered list. I'm going to give it an ID of menu items, and then I'm going to do a child list element. And we'll just say menu 1 times 5. Let's see what that does. There we go. Okay. So just go back over that. That's just an emmet script. Unordered list, ID, menu items. This means a child. So there's a child list element, and then you put what you want to be inside of the list element tags, inside curly braces, and then a multiplier to how many list elements I want to make. Does that make sense? If I wanted to make more unordered lists that also have these 5 list elements, you would come and add your modifier there right after menu items. And then what this will do is it'll make 3 unordered lists like that. Does that make sense for Emmet? All right. So menu items, menu 1. So if we look at this right now, let me zoom back out. So this is some of the stuff that it does automatically. It indents it a bit. It gives us, remember always turn on your inspector. Whoa. Not so big. So it gives us some padding, gives us some margin at the top and the bottom, but that padding is the big thing. It indents and it puts those bullets on there. I always take it off. So, it's up to you. You can use divs. Like I said, that's fine. I'm not super picky. So what I'm going to do here is I want this to be horizontal. So this is everything we need to make the menu right now, except the logo. Let's actually figure that out real quick. All right. Style sheet. That's what we have. Oops. Yeah. Okay, should work. If it doesn't work, we'll jump out, but I don't think it's going to let us do that. Icons into UI, find the right icon. Okay, free only. Let's try the ghost again. Okay, apparently that copied. Did copy. All right, let's see if this works. Let's go ahead and save this. So it obviously it puts it there, but it gives it like no dimension. Huh, that's really frustrating. Maybe I can give it a size real quick. Div ID logo, font size 3 round. Still no, nothing. Man, that's frustrating. All right, let's try adding. Hey, that worked. All right, so it's just a link to the CSS. That's weird. Huh. I wonder why that was broken. No, whatever. It's fixed now. Okay. It's good to know. All right, the ghost is in there. That's fine for a logo. All right, so this is all the HTML we need to do this. The rest of it is CSS. So in our nav here, let's go. We need to give nav ID 1 a width. As always, define your width. Remember, we want to do 100% because we're taking into account the scroll bar. We don't want it to give us that little 10 pixels that are underneath the scroll bar, right? Because that gives us that little weird horizontal wiggle. We don't want that. Okay, we don't need to do display flex onto this because there's only one child of nav ID 1. I'll close some things here. What? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. I don't know what's showing me that for some reason. Okay. Inside menu stuff, though. Let's go do. Oops. ID menu stuff. We have 2 children, so we're going to do display flex. This also is something we need to define a width to because this is the parent that has the logo and the items in it. This is what we're going to give the column, the smaller width to give us the margin. So this is how we're going to center all of our content. So this width needs to be less than that 100%. If you want to, you can, come on, you can define it based off viewport width. I think at this point it's okay though because it's parent. We've defined a width in percentages. We'll just stick to percentages here. I'm going to go like 80%. That might still look a little big. Actually, let's start at 75%. Margin. I don't know what I'm doing. Like typing too fast? Yeah, there's something. I do this. I hit spacebar. And I don't know. That's not what I want. Anyway, 0 and auto. So 0 for top and bottom because we don't need any space at the top and bottom, and we want it to automatically figure out the margins for the left and the right because it'll just split it evenly and apply them evenly. So display flex then. I'm going to justify my content space between because I want the first element, the logo, to hug the left-hand side, and I want the menus to hug the right-hand side. So it's going to take, after I define their widths, it'll take whatever's left over and put that in between them. Because it does just the space in between the 2 elements. If you do space around, it will apply it equally on the left and the right. So it's going to bring it in, and it won't line up on the left-hand side. Okay, that's done. The other thing about nav1 is the background color. If you want a background color, you don't have to have a background color. You can have a invisible or transparent menu. That works too. If you want it to be on top of an image, it's a little trickier, but we can figure that out. Okay, background color. So we'll just pick a color. Something noticeable, but not like horrible. The problem that you come up with menus is oftentimes they look like a bottle lid at the top of your page. You know, they give you this just like flat bar up there that is always there, and it feels like a hat or something. You know, it feels restrictive to me. I don't like it often. When I do it for my own things, I don't ever have one. But a lot of times clients want it because it's a very clear UX element. It's a clear indicator of things to do for the client. So that's fine. So background color, I'm just going to go with the light gray. might end up lightening this. The other thing that we do sometimes is we will do position fixed on navs that are at the top. The reason we do this is that way the nav stays at the top all the time. As you scroll down the page, the nav doesn't disappear, it stays there. Because navigation elements and items, these are things that people always need whenever they're going through a website. Like they would need to know how to get around. And if you hide that and they have to scroll all the way back up to the beginning of the page, then you're causing them or adding an element or adding a few steps into in between them and what they want to get to, which can be frustrating for some people. Okay, so if you have kind of a toned down menu, it's completely fine to do this, to stick it to the top and make it scroll. And we'll look at a couple different alternatives. I'm not going to do it with this one, but I'll show you a couple different alternatives. Okay, so width 100%, background color, menu stuff. All right, so right now, let's go ahead and look at it. So that's where we're at right now. So we're getting there, right? The height is caused by this menu. Right now, the height of this gray bar. That's stuff that we need to come in and fix right now. So I'm going to jump ahead to ULID menu items. And we're going to do list style type none. This will take the bullet points off. We also want to do display flex. That will make it horizontal. And then what we can do is define a width in relation to the parent. And this width will spread them out. Once we apply space justify content. So we'll do width of like 50% maybe. So put some there. What it's doing is it's starting them. There we go. So it's they're hugging the left-hand side of the page. It's not very big, is it? Trying to make the page bigger, and it's just making that bigger. It's hugging the left-hand side of the page. It's not spreading them out across that 50%. So we need to add justify content to this. Oh, not space around. Okay, do that. That should spread out. Now we're getting close to what we want it to look like. If we come back and look at this, right? Getting there. I think we need to add a little bit more space around the icon, maybe the top and the bottom, or make it a little smaller. Right now things feel a little cramped. So the best way to do that is going to be to find the element that has the background color applied to it, which is nav1, and add some padding to nav1. Because remember, padding will stretch out that background color. If you just add margin, it's not going to do it. It's not going to stretch out the boundaries of the div. Okay, padding will do that. It's a glitch, but it's a glitch we take advantage of. Right? It's unintuitive. Like padding shouldn't change the dimension of the div, but it does. So we just accept it and we deal with it and we take advantage of it. If you want to try it out here in your browser first, in your inspector, it's totally cool. Go ahead and do that. So I did 1 rem of padding. That looks pretty good. Right? I kind of like that. It's not bad. Sometimes with logos, it's also good to, if it's a logo for a company that nobody really knows, you can do something like put a P tag or like maybe an H3, be like ghost face. Ghost face is a person. I don't know. Ghost. So my H3, that's going to make it kind of big. Yeah. It's going to come with all kinds of things, so we have some styling we have to do on that. Just with logos, sometimes it's good to have words too. You don't have to. This is up to you. This is me just being goofy. So div ID logo, not color group, but logo. Let's go display flex, justify content, logo space between, oops. Should probably define a width. I don't understand why it does that. I'm going to say 35%, so there's a good 15% of space in between them we will always have. And then the other thing I want to do is, I think that's fine for that. Come now to the H3, take the margin, off, so margin 0. I'm going to do font style, italic, and we might bring the font size down just a little bit. Okay, I don't want space in between. All right, I didn't do my padding. Padding is on nav1. That's too much. Did I just do one room last time? The other thing we can do is come to logo and go text align center. Huh. Right. What I'm looking at here is that we have this weird thing where it's not lining up right there. Oh, I see. So it has to do with his line height. Okay. So take the line height off the H3. Right now it's set to auto. Let's actually just look at it and play with it in here. Let's see, 3 rem, so let's go 2.5 rem. 2.75 rem. 3 rem. 3 rem is better. Yeah, so 3 rem, and then I would put padding on here. Line height, 3 rem. Padding left, I would say let's try 2 rem. 1 rem, 1.25 rems. Yeah, that's not bad. You know, whatever. You play around with it, do what you want. Okay. This is just me messing around. So right now, this is just the basics of it. This is how you would make a menu. These menu items, though, like right now, they are just list elements. They do need to be clickable. They need to be anchor tags, right? We use that anchor tag to make a link for something. So when you stick an anchor tag in, you need to make sure that you put whatever text you want displayed in between the open and closing tag. And then inside the quotation marks here is the target for the reference, like where this is going to go. Okay? So let me stick anchor tags in here real quick. All right. So now if I come back, refresh, these are all anchor tags, but now they look ugly. So now you have to style the anchor tags. You just do that by targeting the A. You could be a little specific if you want different anchors to look differently, but I really, 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 really caution against that. Does anybody want to take a stab as to why you would not want your anchor tags to look different on the same page? Gets confusing, right? If you're training the user to expect a link to look a certain way, it should always look that way on the page. It could be bigger, it could be smaller, but it should always look pretty much the same. All right, you should have a visual clue as to what this thing is. It's a call to action. It's something they can mess with. All right. So I tend to just style all anchor tags the same. So text decoration is how we turn off the. Oops. It's how we turn off the underline. And then your colors. So you could do like. You could set a color, like right now it's a blue for just a regular anchor tag, so we could go color and make it like, I think I'm just going to make them white. And we'll come back to that. I'm also going to make this white, but we're going to do that inside the logo because the children will inherit the settings that you set up for this. There we go. So everything's, I don't know, maybe white wasn't the best idea, but it's there. So right now, and then you'll notice that your pointer changes now when you click over it. It becomes goes from the arrow to the actual pointer, which is good. If you don't want it to do that, you can change that. There's a setting, cursor, and then just whatever you want it to be. You can look it up and see all the different options you have. It's like pointer, arrow, I forget, there's other things. Those are the only two I ever use. But it's an affectation. Like, I wouldn't mess with it too much. Again, because you're training the user to expect something. And right now it's fairly responsive. That's good. So this is the basic menu. Okay, there's no drop downs to this. Each of these things goes to something, but there's no indication. Like when I hover over it, nothing changes. Remember, hovers are just like when your mouse comes over it, you're not actually clicking on it, and they're only really good for desktop. Okay, because on a mobile you don't have hover. Virgilio, what are you doing? What are you listening to? Oh, okay. I thought you were listening to something. So when we're doing this, I like to stick hovers in just as something to use on desktop design, and it's a nice like visual indication that you're doing something. So one of the things I like to do is have the whole menu like area change. So if I come look at my list element, you'll notice my list element is not very big. Like, it's actually, the dimensions of my list element are pretty small. The dimensions of my menu items are also pretty small. That's because I'm doing all of my padding on the overall menu, which is normally what you'd want to do. But if I want my list elements to be like, full size here, right now if I add a hover state to them, like, we'll do it. It's coming down here and say, we'll go list, list A. And how we target hovers is by using a pseudo class. Okay, in the pseudo class, you turn on by using a colon. So it's at the end of your element, use a colon, and you just type in whichever class you want. Hover is the one we're going to use the most. So I'm going to list element, anchor tags hover. So this is only going to work for the anchor tags inside of a list element. And I could make it even more specific and be like UL menu items, list elements. So it only works inside that menu. So this I would change like background color to be like something darker. And so now when I hover over them, they're darker, but that looks kind of dumb. It's tiny. It's like, it's not great. It's not the most noticeable thing. Well, now we have to rethink like how we're applying padding. So I'm going to take padding off of the parent, nav1. Why did I stick that there? This doesn't matter, but it's bugging me. I don't want the padding to be on there because I want the list element itself to provide that sizing, because everything else the parent will inflate itself according to the list element. So I'm going to come up here, make UL menu items, list elements, and then we're going to say, okay, padding 1 rem. All right. So provide padding all around them. Does mess this up, so we're going to have to come in there and mess with that. But notice the overall size changed the same. Now, why are we not getting? Oh, because I'm doing the anchor tag hover. I want the list element hover. There we go. All right, so we have some sizing. There's some space. Okay, there's some margin on the unordered list. So let's take that off. Which makes it a little smaller. That's fine. We can come in and mess with it. But now our menu fits like that. which is closer to what I want it to be. I'm going to change the dimension though because it got smaller. Yeah, it's a little too big. That's better. All right, but I do need to add that onto Ghost here. So I need to come to logo, because right now logo doesn't. These guys are just chilling. I wonder if we could. Do I have display flex turned on? Okay, so under div logo, we should be able to do like align content center. Nope. Okay. Align items center. Yeah, align items center there. So instead of trying to like mess with padding and stuff, which would inflate the size of the div arbitrarily, and we don't want that to happen because we want the sizing to be controlled by the list elements so that our menu looks right. Just using align items center on the parent of the logos, like both these guys, we'll align them in the center so that they fit just right without messing up how the div looks. So div logo, align items center. Okay. So that's how you would do a menu. And right now it indicates that, you know, I'm hovering over it. It's something I can click on. That's good, right? The next iteration of this would be a menu with a drop-down. So like when I hover over it, then it reveals itself, right? This is what we were kind of talking about on Monday. So it's one way to do a drop-down menu. And this is using hover and a setting called visibility, right? Just toggling visibility on and off. So we'll set up the exact same thing. I'm just going to copy it, paste it there. So I have two of them, but I'm going to add a little bit of margin in between them. So let's go margin bottom. We'll go with 3 rows. Okay, so now I have two different menus. They do the same thing, but I want this bottom menu to have drop downs. So all we got to do is come in here and mess with the list elements. How we did this how I was looking at doing this on Monday was to embed an unordered list inside of the list element. Make sure your indentations are correct. All right. And so this would then have the list elements that we want for the menu. And I'm just going to add 3. I'm going to give this an ID of submenu and the submenu 1. All right. Now, if we go and look at this right now, that's what's going to happen. All right, it's going to distort the size. It is a submenu. It is a list element, so it's being automatically indented. That's great, but that's not stuff we want to happen. So now we need to come in and style it a little bit. So we're going to say, oh, I want these to be anchors as well, sorry. Okay. All right. So let's go UL ID submenu, and we can toggle the visibility off. So visibility hidden. You want to say hidden, not none. If you say none, it's not going to be visibility. If you say none, it's not going to be rendered to the page at all. If you say hidden, it'll be rendered to the page, but it won't be shown. Does that make sense? Like the differences there? If you do none, there's nothing you can do to it. If you try to turn it back on, it's not going to turn on because it's not actually being written to the page by the browser. Okay, it's being completely ignored. If you do visibility hidden, it is being written to the page. It's just not being shown, which is what we want to happen. We want to show it whenever we hover over it. We'll also do some styling here, so we'll say list style type none, And then we'll come into our list elements here, submenu, list elements. And here's what we'll give them some size. Actually, I'm going to leave this part. I want to be able to see it for while we're styling it. Okay. So submenu, I'm going to just give them dimensions here. I should have gotten rid of the indentation. I didn't. Okay, let's double check that then. Moz, HTML, UL. No, actually, let's go UL. Oh, it's just padding. That's right. Duh. Okay. Padding 0. There we go. That's what I wanted. Okay, and then I'm just going to give some padding around them, around the list elements themselves, to give them size. So we'll say like 2 rems. Yeah, that's too much. Let's actually just do padding on the top and the bottom, now that I'm thinking about mill. Let's go 1 rem top, 1 rem right, 1 rem bottom, and no rems left. Yeah, that's better. Okay. So it looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to turn visibility hidden back on. They're hidden. Oh, wait. Never mind. Maybe we do want none. Nope. All right, so this is the part where I'm going to have to look it up because I shouldn't have done that. But notice it is being rendered, and the sizing is being rendered, but the list elements themselves are not being rendered. Am I on the wrong one? I'm on the wrong one down here. Yeah. All right, so let's jump to our resources and double check that because I obviously screwed it up. So DevTips has some really nice videos on CSS animations. There's a whole bunch of them. This is the one we were looking at yesterday. Let's just go to his code pen and look at how he did it. I'm going to view compiled on everything because he's using a preprocessor. Display. Oh, it's display. He's doing display, not visibility. That's right. Yeah. Oops, that's my bad. All right. So not visibility. Sorry. Display. 2 different things that do very similar things. Visibility, we'll keep it there, but just it renders it to the page, but it doesn't show you. None. There we go. All right. Display will actually just not render it, but make it something that you can turn back on when you want to. So when we come up to the hover, so we have that hover. I'm going to make this very first one I'm going to give it an ID of what are we going to call this? Sub toggle, I guess. Yeah, we'll call it sub toggle. So lists element ID sub toggle. This is so that we can set a hover state for this. And when we set the hover state for this, it will, if we look back at this guy, this little block right here is kind of important. So if you're hovering over a list element, it's going to then find the unordered list with a certain class and then those list elements and change their display. Now up here is where they've changed that display to be none. Does this make sense? Right? This only works on a parent. It only works for the children inside of a parent because you need this indicator. This is how you get around like click events, right? You don't need a click event for this. You don't need to like target anything really specifically. So we have sub toggle, and then inside list element sub toggle, I'm gonna grab unordered list ID sub menu and their list elements, the list elements in there, and change their display. Actually, we'll just do, it's not the list element that I'm affecting, it's submenu that I'm affecting. So display, and then block is, you know, you can do default, would be fine. You can do block, you can do inline. Inline is the default. It's however you want it to look. So let's end our page. Okay, didn't work. Display default. Okay, they don't like, doesn't like default. Let's go inline. Oh, I did do hover. Thank you. Yep. Is that what you're gonna say? There. But notice what it's doing. Because it's inside of that same div, and it's making that whole thing adjust. It's not what we want to happen. We want it to happen outside of that. So let's see how Travis solved that issue. Yeah, I think so. Yep. So this will keep it, this will take it outside of the flow, outside of the DOM, and just display it as its own thing. Nope. Should have done that though. No. Okay. Oh, here we go. Sorry. That's weird. Because that's what he's doing. So what happens when I don't prep your lessons ahead of time? This is what I do when I try to figure things out. So, whatever. I think it's because we're doing the unordered list and not the list elements. It's the only difference I see. Oh no, it's this right here. The drop-down menu is being positioned absolutely, so it's being taken outside of the, yeah. It's being taken outside of the flow of the document. When you position something arbitrarily, it is no longer, it'll no longer affect everything else around it. I don't like positioning that much because it kind of makes it not flow correctly usually. I don't know that this is what I want for ours, but we're gonna see. We're gonna play with it. Yeah, we're gonna need to give a width. All right. Now it's not displaying at all. Should just override that part. This is what worries me. Like, it should have stuck it up here at the top. It's obviously doing something. So let's turn on our hover. So it stuck it way down at the bottom for some reason. Let's try 0. Nope, still. Oh, now they're over here. Yeah, so all of these, there's one right here too. Those are all white. When you position things absolutely like that, it's really difficult to get them to line up correctly. Yeah, they're inside here. I need to give them a background color. That's the problem. It's not using the background color from the view. This one. But we can give them slightly darker gray. That'll be fine. Okay. Yeah. I haven't given it explicit dimensions or anything yet, but what?
I wasn't ready for how that was gonna look.
It's what?
I wasn't ready for how that was gonna look.
It just made you laugh.
Yeah.
So it's doing that because I gave it this width of 100%. And when this is the danger of position absolute. All right, changing the positions is when you take something outside of the DOM, if you've designed or built with awareness of everything else that's going on or dependency on everything else that's going on in the page, then you're completely taking this element out of that. Right? So a lot of things that when you build responsively, you're building with awareness of the rest of the page, right? Because you want things to flow correctly when the browser width changes. When you do position absolute, it screws that up. You have to really like consider that and think about it constantly. So I'm going to think about this. So we need it to be, god damn. We're gonna need to explicitly write out like how wide it is. He's getting away with giving a width in 100%. Like I'm not sure how this worked out for him. His UL drop-down menu. So what's he doing for that list element? Oh, okay, that's why. So he's got an explicit width set for that. Submenus, list element, subtoggle doesn't have an explicit width, so I need to set this width to be, not the hover. I need to set subtoggle's width to be something. Probably, like what's subtoggle's parent? Menu items, and menu items has a width, I believe. Yeah, so all right, so if I set subtoggles, list ID sub toggle, if we set this width to be 100% of its parent, which is 50% of whatever, then submenu, if I set this width to be 100%, should work. No. Okay. So why are we being 100% of menu items? Oh, menu items is the list. I got you. That's right, because the list element, you're not getting width from anything. You're just using width and padding. All right. So let me set it to be 20% and see what that does.
How's it supposed to look?
How's it supposed to look? It's supposed to look close to what he has here. Like it's supposed to just drop down underneath it, like this. I mean, that's not a difficult thing to do. I just don't have my widths set correctly. I don't. When I code, I don't do a lot of drop-down menus. The reason I don't like drop-down menus because they hide stuff. They become junk drawers for UX design. Like you don't know where to put a call to action for something, and you just throw it inside of a submenu. Right? I don't like hiding things on the page, and that's generally because I designed for mobile first. And when you hide stuff on mobile, you know, aside from like maybe a hamburger menu, which is kind of an unfortunate necessity on mobile, I don't think you should hide your menu items ever. Right? I think the user, you should incorporate them into your design, and the user should be able to see all their options at once. So submenus are really popular like 10 years ago. Anymore, they're not. Yeah.
So you use like a persistent like dot menu while they're.
Yeah, but I'll show you how I do it. I do it a little unobtrusively. I don't make it a bottle cap. I don't make it a top. I don't give it a background, and I stick it outside of the content margin, and I usually stick it over on the left. On phone, that's a little more difficult to do because generally your margins are really small. So what I'll do sometimes is I won't do a persistent menu, or I'll make the things you're looking at be the menu. Like on my own personal site, when you go to the website, all the projects you see, all the little thumbnail images are the menu. right? There's no other menu except at the very top if you go to like my about page and stuff like that. On the JMC side, it's not that great because there's a lot going on, but everything you see is more or less a menu, call to action. I don't hide the menus, so I always forget how you do it, and usually because it involves a lot of just like grossness. Okay, so obviously that looks terrible. Well, let's turn it on, and let's style it in here, and see how we can make it look. List element, subtoggle width of 100. Oh, all right. So the list element we want to be So it's the subtoggle list element. Items list elements, list elements. Oh yeah, it is. It's these guys. So I'm wondering if we can do something like 0, 0, 0, 1. Trying to decide why it's indented like that. Usually padding 0 is what turns that off. Maybe something like left, position left. Pixels? Nope. Yeah, that's going off the screen. I'm gonna have to look at his stuff some more and figure out how he did it. I mean, he's setting his, see, he's doing all kinds of weird shit with how he's got his list elements set up there. He's also taken them out of the flow of the document. They become relative. I mean, if you followed exactly what he has written here, everything would work. He's explicitly declaring size. He's explicitly declaring position. The only problem with that is like this is not going to flow. Like it'll flow within that, but that's yeah. I guess you could do that. Sorry, this goes against like everything that I would naturally want to teach you guys. Trying to get this to work this way. All right, I mean, we can do this and we can make it work. I just gotta refigure some things really quick. I don't want to do this. All right. So let's go menu items. That's gonna be all of them though. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and change some things here so that I'm not messing up the menu that's above. Menu items D. Ugh. Sorry, I'm like thinking about all this through, and like right now I'm gonna have to change a lot to get this to where I want it to be. Okay, so menu items D, but I need to have this for this part. Ha! I broke so much. There we go. Yeesh. Just took that part off. Okay. So the top one is fine. This one is broken now. But hey, look, that's lining up the way I want it to. Okay, let's take a look at that. items 3. Oh, that's because the, gotcha. It's because like everything that I've referred to in that chain now needs to be adjusted. Yeah, all this stuff needs to be copied and adjusted. Move it down here. Stuff. D. Oh, are you guys looking at that? Are you guys just looking at his video, or are you still following along? I know it's kind of annoying that I'm doing this right now.
Are you using the relative?
I haven't yet. I really don't like using it, but I'm probably going to. All right. What do we do for? Do that. Okay. Okay. I need to dissect like how he has his. All right, subtoggle. Okay. So just like how he's dissecting his. Let's go. Color. Not how he's dissecting. Sorry, how he's structured his page here a little bit after I change some colors around here. Okay. Nope. I was A, that's why. Okay. God, if that would just like scoot over a little bit, I'd be really happy. So now that I have everything sort of set up the way I want it to at the moment, this float thing that he's doing here, this is an early way before Flexbox was a thing. This was a way to get stuff to line up horizontally. Okay. You may have learned this in 121. I don't know. Did Brian teach you guys floats? Kind of, maybe. Okay. Floats is definitely like when I was teaching this 4 years ago, we used floats. And then 3 years ago, Flexbox became adopted by all the browsers, so we transitioned to Flexbox. these dimensions that he's doing are not necessarily anything we have to worry about. The thing that is going to make the difference is this right here, position relative, on the list element. So so menu stuff is our, so menu items D, in the list elements in here, I need to set position relative. So I need to find menu items D, list elements, and set position relative. By doing that, I'm going to break a whole bunch of stuff. No, but that got a little bit better. Still a little weird. So now, submenu with its position absolute, I should be able to give it submenu right here. I should be able to give it a width. That will, oops, that's what he's doing. Yeah, the drop down, position absolute, top, see these things I just don't feel right to me, but we'll try them. Width of 100%, top of 100%, and left of 0. We'll see. I can sort of understand why this might work, but I don't think it's gonna. It did! Okay, cool. Something else I think we need is text align center. Still not quite doing what I wanted to do. Submenu, hover, block, list elements. What's going on with that list element? There's like, is it padding? Oh, it is padding. Oh, because I was dumb and did my padding like that. Turn off padding. So let's do top. Okay, list element padding. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you guys why this worked. Or do you guys want to take a stab as to why that worked? Okay, cool. Let's go to rounds. And it's fine. Not submenu, menu items. D list padding. Let's give a little bit more padding here around these guys. Maybe 1.5 for top and bottom, and 2 for left and right. Oops. There, that's better. Okay. Do you guys want to take a guess as to why this worked? We've never talked about position here because I don't ever teach it. Position is a very, very old way of moving things around on the page. Anymore we use grids and we use flexbox. We don't mess with position at all. But in this instance, position works for making kind of a nice drop-down menu. Imagine you could do one with grids as well. I don't know grids well enough. Really, you might try it. Because really, you could set up a grid, right? Like if you draw, you can just render it out on the page to line up the way you want it to, the submenu to line up. Then all you're doing is toggling that display. It's all you have to do on the hover, as long as you get it to line up correctly, right? Flexbox lining it up didn't exactly work out. Although, you did block because you needed to not break. It's that breaking it outside of the flow of the DOM. That's the problem, right? Flexbox isn't going to work that way because Flex depends on being aware of where everything else is. When we talk about the DOM, the document object model, the HTML, I'm going to let that answer. We're always talking about flow. We're always thinking about things in terms of flow. So how the HTML elements are affecting all the other HTML elements, right? Think of it like Tetris. Way, right? If you remove some blocks from Tetris at the bottom, they'll shift, they'll move down. Or even think about it like on iOS when you're moving your folders and icons around, right? It aligns everything to the left and the top. If you take out like a piece here and move it somewhere else, everything else flows to fill that gap, right? You guys know what I'm talking about? That's okay. HTML is the exact same thing because it flows it wants to flow to the left and to the top. that make sense? Okay. So when you set a position, you arbitrarily set a position like absolute. What you're doing is you're saying, I'm taking this element outside of that flow, pulling it out of it, and I'm saying this element should always be positioned in a certain place. That certain place is, if its parent doesn't have a position element set, then that certain place is relative to the display browser. So if I set top to 0, it's going to go to the top left corner. If I set left to 0, it will go to the top left, absolute left top left corner. If I set top to 0, it just goes to the top. If I set top to 100%, it goes to the bottom, right? Because when you're looking at a screen, the 0, 0 coordinates for your x, y axes starts in the top left-hand corner. Does that make sense? The top left-hand corner is 0, 0. Okay. Then you go positive this way and positive this way. It's the opposite of the way they teach you in geometry for some reason. But that's how it's been set up. Okay. So top 100% is the bottom. Left 100% is the absolute right margin of your screen. You can also set right 0 and do the same thing. Right 0 puts you over here, right 100% puts you over here. Bottom 0 puts you here, bottom 100% puts you at the top. That makes sense? Okay. You can also set them with pixel values, but hopefully by now that skews you out. Skews me out. I don't like the creepy feeling. I don't like using pixels because then you're saying it has to always be this size. Right? Works for some things. Okay. This menu works this way because we've set the submenu, the parent, which is this menu 1. I think it says menu 1 up there. We've set that to be position relative. Okay, and all that is saying is that its position depends on the position of its siblings and its parent. So kind of the normal default, right? It's a little bit different because it lets absolute use its coordinates as its base and not the page's coordinates as base. Does that make sense? If you don't set position at all, it will work. Everything it will work as if you had set it to position relative, but position absolute can't do anything with it. You're like exposing it so the position absolute can see it and do something with it. Does that make sense? It's a bug. It's not a smart way for a browser to work, but it's how it works. Okay? What you have to understand about HTML and CSS and web design is it is not a completely clean and logical system at all. It is a mess because lots and lots of people have worked on it for the last 40 years. Keep that in your head, right? So if you kind of get hung up on, well, this makes no sense, but this works this way, it's like, yeah, you just have to accept it. Right? You just figure it out and find workarounds. So absolute works on the child because we have relative set on the parent. So before I hadn't set relative on the parent, and so it was trying to take the coordinates of the browser window. It was trying to stick the menu up there, right? I set position relative on the parent, and now sub lines up with the parent. Okay. The hover just knows where the cursor is. If the cursor is just slightly over something, okay? And then that can turn on something else or make something happen. Usually we use hovers for indicating that something is a button or that it's active, right? It's a visual clue that helps the user know that this is something they can manipulate or interact with. But again, hovers really only work best when someone has a mouse and a cursor or a trackpad and a cursor. So generally just desktops. With touch displays, not a great thing. There's other things we can do on touch displays. So really, we haven't done any CSS animation. We just got this working. Okay. So I'm still recording. We have like 20 minutes. Sorry, guys. Let's do some animations. Maybe what I'll do is actually I'll make your homework for you guys to go through and look at this stuff. We're gonna get rid of Jake right here real quick. We don't need this one. We might need this. Let's see. What did I say? Chapters what? 1 and 3? Yeah, let's do those. All right. So I'm going to say this. You guys are the first web design class that I've let do animations. Normally it stays in interaction design. So, Sam, you did interaction design already, right? Yeah. All right, so you'll be okay with this. CSS animations.
Is this like the hover over something and it like explodes with that kind of interaction? Or that kind of, or only just like the block?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, kind of. I think you've done some of this already. So, but did you do it last semester or the year before? Okay.
Last spring.
Right. All right. So yeah, you've done some of this already. Let's go. All right, so I'll write this up. What your homework is going to be is to go through and on the Dev Tips videos, let's look at his series here. These are a bunch of videos. Now, I don't expect you to get through all of them because there are quite a few. Let's get through drop-down menu, so 1 through 4 by Monday. All right, and I'll put that on there. Oops. So 1 through 4 for first, 5 through 8 second. So by Monday, I want you to get through 1 through 4, and then for Wednesday of next week, we'll do 5 through 8. And I will demo Monday doing the rest of these. So like a step-by-step form, spinners, loaders, junks, etc. The one that you really want to pay attention to is this animation keyframes. All right. I, of course, have not talked about this at all today, but the way that CSS keyframe animations work, you have a special call inside your CSS, and it's just at keyframes. What you're keyframing, okay, what element that you're keyframing. That's where your identifier goes. I'll bring up the page here. Okay. So the name of your keyframe, or the name of the set of keyframes, sorry, what you're starting and where you're going. There's lots of other things you can do with this. You can set percentages, so at the very beginning, and you got to think of the percentages as like the time for the animation. Okay, so your keyframes, the name of your animation, and then if you think of the duration of your animation as a percentage, like 0% to 100%, at what point within this duration are things changing, are things happening? Okay, where do you want things to go? And so you set your settings inside of that. Now, keyframe only works if you then have something inside of it that, like if you then set animation on something. Okay, so this animation CSS key, and we'll go into this more. You're gonna watch the videos, and then on Monday we'll go over it. But
So what is scripting? Is
this is not really scripting. Scripting would be like jQuery and JavaScript. Yeah. I mean, this is technically this, like, I chuckle when people call this coding because it's not really coding. It's markup, is what it is. CSS is getting to be a little bit more like scripting because it can be a little more complex, especially when you start interconnecting animations, hover states, pseudo classes, stuff like that. You can make some really interesting things happen. So I guess it's like a level of complexity, right? So low-level stuff like just some HTML, CSS, like just for styling, that's markup. The next bit would be like semi-complex interactions, things adjusting to whatever the user's doing, modals, stuff like that. That would be scripting, and then the next level up would be like web apps, like programming, actually making something from the ground up that is meant to be completely interactive, that saves information, knows states, things like that. I never get into the programming side of it unless we're doing like, well, in interaction design, you know, sometimes we make apps, sometimes we just make really complex websites. It just depends on the class. So, okay, so with the animation, you set the animation. God, we don't have enough time to get into this. Watch the videos. We will talk about it on Monday. I'm sorry this was so thrown together today. All right, but I'm very happy that you guys want to do this, or at least most of you want to do this. It'll be okay. It'll be fine. So let me. I'll formalize this assignment. I'll give you guys all these links. So you have some reading to do and you have some videos to watch over the weekend. And then I would say get started. This can just be a page on your website, the one we've already had going. That's fine. Just make it a new page. Eventually we'll come back to the beginning. Oh, that would be fun. Yeah. Okay, so eventually what we'll end up doing at the end of the semester, after we've made all these pages into this website for the semester, right? We'll make a menu. I'll teach you how to inject HTML with jQuery. Okay, and what I mean by that is instead of having to go into each individual HTML page and put a menu in there, right? Put like hard-coded HTML menu, like I did today. You'll have one HTML page that only has a menu in it, and that you use a bit of jQuery on each of your other pages to put that menu into it. And what this does is it means you only have one place where you have to update that menu if you want to change something about it. Does that make sense? Okay. An example of this is on my site. This thing that loads right here, all this, is loading from a script, from a jQuery script. Okay. This whole grid, this is my menu system for my projects. Okay. This grid of projects is only on one. Well, I have 3 different versions of them, but it's by itself in an HTML page. And then what's actually going on here on this one, right here. So inside of this HTML, I have this div ID new works. Now this is empty on the actual page before it loads. Okay. When it loads, there's a script that loads all of it. That loads all this. Loads that class works. And that script is right here. So it's finding the ID new works, and then it's loading this HTML page, pages works HTML, class works. So it's loading a certain element on that page. Does that make sense? It's really, really simple and straightforward. Do you guys kind of get that? Do you see that? Sort of what's happening there? If not, yeah? Okay. We'll get into it, but eventually at the end of the semester, that's what we'll do. We'll use a little bit of jQuery and we'll inject a nav into all of your pages so that you can so you can navigate around your site, because we're slowly building up a website now. You should have like 3 pages or something, I think, at this point. Right? Most of you have 3 pages. The 2, just 2, right? Style guide and the elements, that's all we have right now. So we'll probably end up making like a main page, like a home page. And then this animations page, we'll probably do something else after animations. I don't know yet. Right. I'm changing it for you guys, so yeah, it's more fun that way. Okay, any questions about this? I know it was a lot today.
So we abandoned.
Are we abandoning it?